Welcome to episode 10 of the Truth in the Arena podcast. I am excited today to be welcoming a pair of guests, two Hall of Fame football coaches from the state of Ohio, who together created the Miami Football Coaches Association Social Justice 7v7 tournament. They are Coach Al Powell and Jim Place. Coach Powell is a Hall of Fame coach, not only in football, but also in track and field, where he has 16 combined indoor and outdoor state championships, 24 City League titles in football. In addition to that, Coach Powell is a best-selling and nationally acclaimed author. He's a trauma recovery coach and a consultant for community organizations across the country. Coach Place coached for 48 years and is in the Ohio Football Coaches Hall of Fame. He's been recognized as a distinguished alumni by the University of Dayton and also developed a curriculum for helping develop student leaders through social and emotional learning. Coach Powell, Coach Place, thank you so much for agreeing to come on and join us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's our pleasure.
All right. So we're going to jump right into it, and I'm going to begin with a question for Coach Powell. And to begin, if you could, please take us back to the summer of 2020. And you have George Floyd's murder, which came right on the heels of the killing of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. And that sparked a series of Black Lives Matter marches, other racial protests, racial justice protests across the country, and then a heated backlash. Can you describe that moment for us where you decided this is unsustainable, doing nothing's not an option, so what are we going to do?
Yeah, I was set back. I've already had been wrestling with some issues because just a few months before those three tragedies that you mentioned, there were a series of four other tragedies from in 18 and 19, and it just like, okay, it's building and it's getting all this momentum. And to see that visual of George Floyd, the collective feeling of the country was exploding. I was just devastated. I had a fifth grader who had made a statement in the session who said, God doesn't love Black people. I'm like, whoa, what is that about? And it was based off of this coincidental series that was going on involving peace officers or police officers. And I'm like, okay, how do we handle this discussion? And I'm driving back from Michigan, heading south to Ohio, and something came over me, whether it was spiritual, whether it was emotional, whether it was historical memories being from the deep South myself. It just came over me, and I pulled over at a rest area, and I said, I just need to talk to someone. I just have to get this off of my chest where I won't be judged or called a anti-patriot or anything. I just needed to say something, take care of my psyche and my heart. And I called my friend Jim Place. And coincidentally, he was driving, heading back to Ohio, I believe, at the time. And we talked for about 45 minutes. You know, I started off with, man, I just need to talk to you for a couple of minutes. And now I could be frank. I basically said, what in the heck or what in the hell is going on in our country? You know, this is sad. And I had that fifth grader in my mind as well. And I said, you know, what can we do, bro? You know, just, you know, and, you know, we just got into a really authentic moment. As young people would say, we got into our feelings. You got into your feelings, right? But it was a place I didn't want to be in feelings like that because, hey, I'm 67 years old, so I remember the 60s. I remember why my family left Utah, Alabama, or the Birmingham area. Just everything flooded back, Nate. Just like, wow, you know, we're here again in my lifetime. Um, and so what can we do? And he said, let's put our heads together, you know, brother, and let's think of something. And we know we both are related to football. We're brothers through football. I lost to Jim many a games. Uh, so
Went
he
both
says,
ways.
man, yeah, yeah. He said, man, let's see what we can do with the association. And he got back with me about a week later, and this idea was born. And I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, the wounds are too fresh. I don't think we're going to get a lot of people. We get 12 teams, that's cool. And I think that first year we started off with 24, 25, and man, it's been going ever since. And Jim teaches character education. He came up with these questions to ask. I'm like, bruh, because they're daring questions. They're in your face questions, but they're very appropriate if the ambiance is correct. If the young people are feeling safe. And so we managed to do that, make young people feel safe. And it's been, as the young people would say, it's been popping ever since, against the odds, against the odds. But yeah, that's where we were. I'm sorry for being long-winded, but I have to get emotionally ready for that question. I hope you understand, because
Absolutely.
the stuff comes flooding back, and that was a horrible sight to just to see that. And, yeah.
No, please do be
Nathan,
long-winded.
one thing Al said, I'm in the car, I'm driving back from Memphis, Tennessee, and the words that really hit me with Al said is, Jim, this country's going to get torn apart. And why don't we take our very small area and pull it together instead of pull it apart? I hung up the phone. I was in tears. My wife was on the speaker. My wife was on tears too. Nathan, I said to my wife, I said, Al shouldn't have had to make that call to me. I should have been making that call to Al, and I'm embarrassed that had to happen that way, because I coached the majority of my career in either integrated situations or 100% minority schools. So in some sense, I'm ahead of the curve. But you know what, Nathan? I still at 7:30 get in my car and drive back to my home in the all-white suburbs. And on the weekends I hang out with my all-white friends, and I'm in this bubble. And sometimes I need to break that bubble and say, wait a minute. Come back to your roots and understand what you really stand for and what you're all about. Al woke me up. I constantly tell my wife, I love being around Al because it makes me come out of that bubble that I'm in. I don't want to live in that bubble. I want to get out of the bubble. So, it's a great relationship. And I think, as you saw in the introduction here, we feel comfortable talking to each other about anything. And the rest is history 5 years later.
No, that's incredible. And very, very important points, both in terms of like having that moment where you feel like you need to do something and wanting to then take the next steps in order to make that happen. And then also having the authenticity to recognize that I want to help, but oh my goodness, I should have been doing more. And what could I have done more? And those are both the types of responses that then lead into my next question, which is for Jim, because yes, you can decide that you want to use football, or for other coaches use their own sport as that vehicle to make a difference, but you can't just drop in out of the blue and decide to do that. To do so, you need to have built up that foundation of credibility and respect among your peers and among your athletes. You can't just start talking about values out of the blue. You need to have been living them and modeling them for a certain amount of time. So, Jim, through the years, can you talk just a little bit about a few of the basic core values and principles that you've tried to instill in your athletes as things that they'll be able to then take into their greater lives?
Well, let me start by explaining what the event consists of. So the event last year grew to 72 teams. We put the 72 teams in the groups of 4, which means we had 18 groups. In order to do that, we had to go to 6 sites. So we're all over the Miami Valley, 6 sites, 72 teams, groups of 4. Our goal for those groups of 4 is to have it 100% diverse, half white and half black and minority students, as simple as that. So we set the teams up. We might bring in a team like Dayton Dunbar, which is 100% minority, and bring in a team from out in the outer regions is 100% white, add 2 integrated schools, and then all of a sudden you've got your 4-team group. You look over the 3,000 participants that we had there, our goal was to have about 1,500 white participants and about 1,500 black participants. And the day is about diversity. We tell them, you're going to come here and talk about race and diversity, and it's about football, but it's much more than that. And we think that's what makes it the most unique, as the Washington Post said, the most unique 7-on-7 in the country. Now, when we started with 24, the biggest problem, Nathan, is every coach only likes to go to 3 or 4 7-on-7s, and they have that set pattern. They say, oh, no, these are the 4 that we've always gone to. So we had to break the pattern of those 7-on-7s. So usually what we would say is, hey, why don't all 4 of you come? And they say, that's a great idea, but we're going to mix you up. We're going to put you into different groups and everything. And we started with groups, and Al probably got 12 teams to come. I probably got 12 teams to come, and we got that first group going. Then the word spread, and it just spread, and it has grown, and we're up to 72 teams. Next year, we already know of 10 more teams that said, Coach, I can't come this year because I didn't plan my vacation right and this, that, and everything, but we'll be back next year. So we think we're going to be over 80 next year. We're talking to the people up in Cleveland, the Cleveland Coaches Association, in conjunction with the Cleveland Browns, about expanding to Cleveland. So I think the one thing to get from all that message is, Nathan, is this: people want it. This is not something that, the product sells itself. In other words, it doesn't take Al or I to do it. It's the product. We say, listen, we want to come together and we want to have a great day of football. You're going to play 7-on-7 for 2 hours, and we're going to match you against teams that you're almost equal to. But then the next hour is what sells the product. So really, the product sells itself, Nathan.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, I think that message of positivity, unity, inclusion, diversity, those are things that are values that us in sport do gravitate towards. We should want those things in our sporting life. But you also mentioned a couple other things in that coaches in their tournament scheduling, they have a set pattern, and that you are creating a unique event. And while we like those values in sports, there are also all kinds of traditions and rituals that we get used to in sport. And we like to know what's habitual. We like to know what's common. We like to be when we show up someplace, we don't want to look like we don't know what we're doing. We want to feel like we're the experienced hands leading our players into this place. Yes, this is how we check in. This is where we go to the sideline. This is where we warm up. None of this is random. So for your players, and I'll direct this, Coach, to Coach Al, or for the teams that are coming in, how have you helped break down a little bit of that fear of the unknown in terms of letting them know that this is a little bit different than what you've done? So kind of establishing that this is going to be something that's outside the normal routine. And then how have you responded to any pushback from coaches, athletes, administrators who are like, well, this is not what we usually do?
Well, and Jim can chime in on this as well, because it's funny, amongst our circles, our leagues, the commonality has been people want to whisper things to you on the side. They don't want to make their opinion of maybe they're bored or someone on the team, that a kid didn't come with the team because their parents didn't want to. So they sort of whisper things to you privately. So it's, there are some people with some beliefs that, they're not ready for this yet. But in the traditional piece, when they get off the bus, it starts with the way that we greet them. And one of the things I said, and thank you for having the courage and as my grandmother would say, the mitigated gall to come, meaning the courage to have a pair to come, because there are people in their leagues who refuse to come. And it's been discussed, but we don't make it the issue. The tradition is for unity and peace, which is held, that belief is held by the majority in the country. Okay, so that's what we want to concentrate on. One of the things that Jim and I discussed very early in our private meetings was like, listen, we can either feed the gossip or we can take the good and go forward with that. If it's only a half plate, we're going to share that half plate, but we're going to be satisfied at the end of the day. We cannot afford to be distracted, because one of the traditions in football is I try to distract your defense. That's what I do with my offense, all that unnecessary motion. But it's just to distract. If I could just get the safety to bite, if I can get the linebacker to step over a gap, That's what it's about. So we have looked at it and dealt with it through the analogies of football. One of the things that we do within the sessions is we sort of huddle up. When he puts them in those groups, what do you do in football? You get in the huddle, right? And you and in that time that you're in that huddle, you're discussing a play, which is your secret weapon. And if everyone's on the same page, you score a touchdown. When he breaks those young men up into the group, we're trying to score a point. But one thing that we have agreed upon, we do not use proper nouns. We do not say this party, that party. Um, there's a little history given on what this country has been through and how football has managed to help the world integrate, America integrate. The story of Paul Brown and what he did as a college coach and a pro coach. Um, some of the historical greats that you never heard of. Some of those stories. So against the odds. So we're taking a tradition um, of football. Football is, I always say to the young people in my presentation, football is played between the lines. And when you go out of bounds, things stop, right? Life is played between the lines, and we cannot afford to go out of bounds. For everyone to be healthy and to go for good, healthy competition in this discussion has been phenomenal. I really cannot describe it. And I was just thoroughly impressed the way that the article came out. The guy was just so honest in his observation. Um, and that's part of what we're doing. We like, listen. The belief is this, Nathan, and I'll be quiet. Earth, Wind, and Fire said in a hit song back in the '70s, "A child is born with a heart of gold." We believe that if you don't remind them that they have a good heart, the heart of gold turns to a heart of stone. This is our symbol for knowledge drop, right? And we drop that's about the knowledge we drop. And then Jim gets up and says, "You're going to have a discussion." And I don't want you to be comfortable. If I wanted you to be comfortable, we'll have you saying kumbaya. But it's right. So I hope I answered your question. But that's where we've been, man. We've had some pushback, but we have decided to ignore it. Just like when you have a penalty on a play and your players want to blow up at each other. No, 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 no. This is not the time. We use that analogy. This is not the next play. As Jim is famous for saying next play. I stole that from him 30 years ago when I heard him saying to his team, next play. So I'm like, yeah, that's right. And that's what life is about in this issue of building unity and patriotism amongst all people getting on the same page.
That's fantastic. And something I really like that you mentioned there in terms of using that sports analogy of what the offense is trying to do to the defense. I tell my players all the time that our movement on the ball in soccer is meant to disorganize the defense. It's not necessarily meant to do any one thing. The defense is set in a compact organization, and we're trying to distract them. We're trying to pull them out of formation. We're trying to take them someplace they don't want to go so we can go where we do want to go. But I've never actually, in these conversations, we often talk about media messages and propaganda and how you're receiving those messages, but haven't actually tied it into that offensive strategy of sport, which is sometimes doing that same thing, trying to take you away from where you want to go so that somebody has an opening to go where they do want to go. So that's fantastic. And then another lead in where you discuss the players coming off the bus and you tell them that they're doing something courageous. And in sport, we constantly do tell our players that, be brave, take a risk, be courageous. And then sometimes we as coaches like to stay in our lane and forget to be brave and take some of those risks ourselves. And Jim alluded to it a little bit in one of his first answers, but as you're telling players to be brave and be courageous as they come off the bus and letting them know that they're in this place, can you describe even further what that experience of the workshop sessions is like for those players involved? Like, what are some of the questions that they're answering in their small groups? What are the topics that they're covering? And what are the core messages that they're sharing back and forth in these incredibly diverse environments?
Sure, Nathan. So let's finish. Football finishes. They play each team for 40 minutes for a total of 4 hours, 3 40-minute sessions, and then they go to a session for the social justice session. The social justice session starts with a speaker about 15 to 20 minutes. Now, luckily, 2 of our facilities, the University of Dayton practice field and Welcome Stadium, are both right next to each other. So we alternate the times there, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way up to 4. The last one's 4 with the speaker starting at 6 o'clock. Now, we put our headliner there. We put Coach Al Powell speaks to those groups. And he does this whole thing about understanding, and he says check when he wants to understand. And he delivers a powerful, powerful message to the young people about why they're there and everything else. So that's a great speaker. At the other sites, we line up speakers. The Cincinnati Bengals were one of our sponsors this year, and they provided some speakers. All right. Also, Michael Carter, the vice president of Sinclair Community College, gives a phenomenal talk that Al sort of referred to earlier about, hey, listen, in every society, there was segregation, there was prejudice, but somebody stepped up and broke that. And his main message is, one of you can step up and break that. So each speaker has a different message. Al is phenomenal. Michael Carter's phenomenal. The Bengals were good. And we have local former pro athletes from town here who speak. So they all speak in there, but a couple of the things that we tell them when we say, listen, here's some things we want you to hit on. Number one is all of you have dreams of going on and playing football at the next level. You know, every high school student has that. If you think you're going into a Division I, so if you're a white person and you think that you're going into a Division I locker room, you're going to go into a locker room 70% minority. So you better learn to adjust. If you're in a minority young man and you're going to go to a campus at a Division I school, you're going to go to a campus that is predominantly white. You have to learn how to adjust. Football can help you learn how to adjust to improve your future in football and in life. So that's one of the things that we tell the speakers. Would you hit on that? And then we ask them, would you relate a personal experience where diversity has affected you in a positive way? So that's what we tell the speakers. So picture this, Nathan. You go in, you got your 4 teams together. We've got some massive groups where we have like Springfield and St. Xavier, which are 2 of the very best schools in Ohio. Cincinnati St. Xavier has 60 seniors, just to give you an example of what they bring.
Yes.
They bring about 110 to a 7-on-7.
Yes.
Bill's been in the state finals 3 of the last 4 years. Yeah, so you're looking at a group of 4 teams, you're looking at about 210 or 220 students, or we've got our little schools that have smaller schools that maybe have 15 or 20 players there, so you're looking at a group of 80. So all kind of different size groups, and then they come in and they hear the speaker. The next thing is we say, okay, we want you to go into groups, and your group has to have 3 white guys, and it has to have 3 black or minority guys. And one thing we tell them is when they walk in, we are going to say white, we're going to say black, we're going to say minority. So society is afraid of that. But we're outside of society. This is the Miami Valley Football Coaches Social Justice 7-on-7. This is a whole different world, so get used to it. As simple as that. So then we tell them you have to have 3 of each in each group, a coach in each group, so and 8 in a group and a coach. And so they go and they sit in their groups, and then we hand out a list of questions. So one person comes up and gets the questions. And basically, these are the questions that we give them. And I'll read you the first couple, Nathan, just to give you an idea of what they are. And every player has to answer every question. You can't pass. You have to answer with something. So first one, please introduce yourself, your name, your school, your year in school, and your position. That's simple. Number 2, do you feel football can be a positive factor in people from different backgrounds accepting each other? Explain. Number 3, do you feel your team would be open to more activities that expose them to racially different schools? 7-on-7, scrimmages, games, joint events between teams. Explain. Number 4, what are ways you can promote social justice, acceptance of others on your team, in your school? Explain. Number 5, what is the number 1 reason there is not more interaction between people of different races? Explain. Number 6, do you feel that sometimes you have to get uncomfortable with talking about race to get comfortable? Explain. Number 7, comment on one thing you heard from the speaker. So they're tough questions. I mean, you know, you take a young man from an inner city school, throw him together with a young man from a rural school. You know, not only have they never interacted much, we're going to ask them to get uncomfortable, as simple as that. And I think, Nathan, one of the things that we really want to accomplish is this. We believe contact brings acceptance. Contact
Yes.
brings more acceptance and awareness. Let's bring them together. Let them talk. And we're not afraid to talk about it. We show that, and that's what the day is like. And the one comment that I'll make, and then I'd like Al to comment on this also, is during that time period, we walk around, and we had some coverage. Dave Sheehan came out from the Washington Post. Tom Ardishan from the Daily News all wrote feature articles, tremendous articles promoting it after our fifth year this year. But they walked around, Al and I walk around, and you just stand there and you listen to the kids talking. Now, every once in a while, you hit a group where you go, oh, they don't get it. But 9 out of 10 groups, you go, that's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, almost you're overcome by saying that is so cool to hear those kids getting along, talking, and then I'll let Al talk about the selfies. He's real good at promoting that. So Al, what do you think about the whole thing?
First of all, like I said, yeah. First of all, like I said, when you first presented those questions to me, I'm like, man, this is the stuff we do on the college campus. I don't know if we're ready to do that yet. And he like, man, listen, we're not going to sugarcoat this thing. In that sense, we're just not going to force anyone to do anything they don't want to do, but we're going to encourage them because it's their job to make this world better. And as you walk around, you start to hear the kids ease up. Now, I'm fortunate. I have 3 nephews that play for 3 of the top suburban teams. And so I get this inside information, what's really going on, what incidents has happened that's not public, that sometimes is considered racial, not so much by a teammate, by something that a parent says, because he may be playing that position now, so on and so on. And I've asked them at each one of these schools, has things gotten better since you guys been coming to the program? Like, yeah, Lisa, they always talking about what you and Coach talking about, and it has improved us tremendously. I'm like, wow, that's just amazing. And we tell them at the end, your assignment is to get up, get your phones, and believe it or not, they hadn't touched the phones. Because you go to a school, even when I'm teaching, kids are sneaking on their phones all the time. They haven't touched the phones, and they go get the phones. I said, your job is to find at least 5 or 6 people from another team that you don't know, who doesn't look like you per se, and take a picture, a selfie for yourselves, and then find a coach from another staff and take a selfie, someone you will remember, and then go home and post this stuff on your social media. Man, when you see the social media feeds and everybody's taking their pictures, and it's just, black guys, white guys, everybody got some type of sign up, right? But you look at their face, you just study their faces. They're like, wow, I've discovered something. I'm standing next to a guy that perhaps a stereotype that's been fed to me says he's going to rob you, he's going to hit you, he hates you, things like that. And you're just seeing genuine, authentic. You used the word authentic early in the broadcast. Authentic trust. That's the first step. That's all we want to achieve is the first step. The first step. Whether it's at the camp or whether it's at our summit. And Jim will follow up a little bit about our summit. It's just it's just a beautiful piece. And we often tell the young people, it's your generation we've been waiting on. You're the guys. We cannot let you go by without having discussion. I went through high school in the 70s, and the discussion didn't take place. When I got into the workforce, wow, did I get knocked on my butt, because I hadn't had those feelings discussed that I had, and those suspicions. I was accused of things that I never did. I had to work years to prove my innocence and things like that. And thank God that happened. Um, and you're just like, wow, just because I looked like someone, and that's unfair because I have an identical twin. So, I'm like, wow, but that was the stereotypes that was just knocking me down. But I never gave up hope. I never gave up hope. And when I met Jim Place, a lot of my kids from my community was going to his parochial school, and they would walk right across my football field to catch the bus. And I was like, man, if he played here, what we would be. But when I realized who was coaching them, I'm like, yeah, they couldn't be in better hands. They couldn't be. And I had kids come from his program back to my program as well too. Um, and so yeah, it's just, man, it's just yeah. I'm not at a loss for words. Only when I'm trying to describe what has actually happened. I know it's like the movies, Tinkerbell or somebody comes out and do the magical dust and everything is beautiful. Man, I haven't had an argument. We haven't had an incident in those sessions, anything like that. It's been mostly all good. There are some kids who are just very shut down. It's like as if my parent is going to find out or my papa is going to find out that I shook, another guy's hand of another color. Very guarded, but that's very few, very
Right.
few. But they come back the following year too. And then we say too when we're taking the selfies, and I'll shut up after this. Coaches count, meaning myself and Jim, and they run up, and there's a line for me. Coach, I got to get a picture with you. And then they ask the question, and Jim can verify this because we followed up on some. Can you come to our school and talk?
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. Whoa, so we've done character days, things like that. And Jim, please follow up on that. And it's just like, wow, young people are calling, can you come to our school and talk? There's people in our school that need to hear this, not just football players. I also play soccer. Can you talk to the soccer team? Stuff like that. And like, well, if you invite us, or if you invite me, I'll do the best I can to try to, accommodate that. But yeah, it just I'm not blowing smoke on you, bro. I'm just telling you the truth, what is happening in there. Yeah, yeah.
No, that's fantastic. And one of the things in terms of being able to tackle a problem, the very, very first thing you have to do is identify the problem. And I like the
Yes.
fact that you say, we're going to say black and white because, well, how can you possibly deal with the problem of racism if you can't even use some of the basic terminology that's involved? So you have to take that first step and get that out of the way so that you can then get to that more honest place that you're trying to take the kids towards. And one of the things you mentioned is getting a little bit of that inside information and feedback from your nephews and, oh, this is kind of how it's gone. And you've talked a little bit about some of the follow-up of other people asking you to come to their schools. And I do want to kind of dig a little bit deeper, and this can go to either Al or Jim can chime in on this one. For those athletes who you're pretty sure in their group, they get it, or they ask you to come back to their school, or they've come back 3-4 years in a row, and you've said that there's those athletes and teams that have been there for multiple years. What feedback have you got about how they've been able to take these leadership lessons and these character lessons either into their team environment or into the next phases of their social and regular life? How have they been able to adapt some of the lessons that they've learned as this first step you're providing them in the tournament setting?
I'll start and then I'll take over. The number one message that I hear after they get done speaking in their groups for the 30 minutes, and that's a short time, but you're amazed how fast people can break down barriers. And it tells me this, kids wanted this. They want to talk about it. The number one message I hear, Nathan, is this: we want a better world than the one that's been given to us. Here's the world that's been given to us as far as race relations. We want it better, but we don't know how to do it. Somebody please tell us how to do it. Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to tell them to do it. And I think something that was really inspiring, Centerville is the largest, primarily white suburb here in the Dayton area. Very big district, very good district, great district, very good in sports, very good in academics. Well, they asked Al and I to come in and put out an all-day session for them on character, and we've done that for a number of years. And man, we go back and forth. Al does one thing and I do another thing. We get up on the stage at the end, and Al does his little thing where he does that check and understand and everything. And we have all the community leaders sitting in the front row, and the place goes absolutely crazy. And, and you walk out of there and you go, why can't this be happening everywhere? As simple as that. People want to come together. The big thing, Nathan, that they don't know is how. Tell us how. Well, that's a little bit of what our program's about. We're trying to tell you how. We can't do a whole lot. One of the things Al Boyd and I both believe in is this: win little battles. We can't change America. We can't change the state of Ohio. What we can change, though, is Miami Valley High School football. And Al and I can try to reflect upon that, and we think we're being successful at it. I mean, that's why at the end of the day, every year for 5 years, Al and I look at each other and we go, we did it. We did it. In other words, what we wanted to accomplish, we did it today, and we're going to do it even better next year because the kids walk out of there with just that little bit of taste saying, I want this. Somebody please show me how. And then we hope they go back to their schools and try and figure the how out. Pretty big question, though. How? As simple as that. Al, what's your thoughts?
Yeah. But Jim tricked me. He said, man, they want to do it all day. Now, I'm thinking, yeah, well, all day, it's a half a day because schools are not going to do all day from the first bell to the end. Man, it's all day, Nathan. It's all day. And so I mix it up. I'm a public speaker anyway. And so, my concentration, I do a thing called peopleology where I study young people. That's all I do. I used to tell a joke to the audience. I'd be sitting at the mall watching young people. Young people look at me and say, "What you doing?" I say, "I'm working. What you doing?" I love human behavior, and so I get up and we have a catch call, an all catch call that we're doing. Like every 10th slide, it says, "I am a work in progress. I am a work in progress," and the whole entire auditorium, when you see the slide, you have to read it in unison. And I say louder, "I am a work in progress." That works several ways and it eases the tension, but also says none of us are perfect. So if you have this belief about a person or a group or whatever, hey, we're not perfect. But the more information you have, the more informed you become. Then there's a piano there. I only know about three or four songs. One day I had the whole school singing, um, and Jim calls me back for an encore. I'm like, I played all the songs that I know. And but the young people are just one of their favorite ones. A small jingle went something like this: "When I grow up, I want to be like you," and they repeat it. "When I grow up, I want to be like you. Outstanding, outstanding, wonderful, wonderful, marvelous, marvelous, a miracle, miracle, a hero, a shero, smart, beautiful, and cool," and they lose it. And that's what you're hearing walking from the session to the auditorium. "When I grow up, I want to be like you." Things like that, man. And they just get hooked. And every once in a while, you're at the mall or something, you run into a kid. I ran into a young lady. I was out in the Centerville area at Odd Lots, something like that. Don't mean to promote, but I was there. And the young lady just kept looking. She says, "I know you." And I'm like, "Yeah." Now, I got fog. I'm over 60, right? And so I'm like, "Where would she know me from?" She said, "When I grew up, I want to be like you." I said, "Oh, yes." I said, "I was at your school." She's like, "Yeah." She started calling her friends. "Oh, this is him. This is him. Check, check." And I'm like, "Oh, wow." So, it warms your heart to know that they're leaving there inspired, and they are the change. They will make the change. We again back to my motto: a child is born with a heart of gold. It is our job to make sure it doesn't turn into a heart of stone. Right?
No, that's fantastic. And again, I really like the way that you're always able to kind of tie things back into that world of sport, which really helps my listeners. And one of the things that I constantly tell my players that, the game of soccer is a sequence of little battles over and over and over again. And you win your duels, your teammates win their duels. And collectively, if each of you are winning your little battles, then together you can be successful as a team. And that's kind of the same thing, is you don't have to fight the giant fight all at once. It's little individual thing that you do that ultimately makes a difference. And then you mentioned that, in terms of unity, it's something that kids want. Kids don't want to be divided. They want to come together. They want to be a to connect, and they want to have that learn, how do we connect together? We don't want to be separated, and we don't want to be angry at each other. Meanwhile, kind of at a broader level, things that have been put in place for diversity and inclusion are under attack with the current political landscape, which makes some coaches and others in leadership positions a little bit more reticent to do some of the things that you're doing and implement some of the things you're implementing, because the landscape is turning against that, but not at the youth level. So do you have some suggestions or advice for coaches who may be motivated to promote diversity, inclusion, social justice, racial justice in their teams and in their leadership situations, but are a little bit fearful of doing so?
If I could, I just entertained that question last week at a seminar at one of the universities. You can't live life on the edge. You can, but if you live life on the edge of the cliff, you don't have many choices. So seek solid ground. Wow, what do you mean? Seek solid ground for you can have rooms to operate and options. We've been accused of that's a woke agenda you guys are having. So woke, I'm like, when did woke become a bad word? I'd rather be up and conscious. If I'm not woke, I'm sleepwalking. But woke, WOKE, working on knowledge of self every day. Working on knowledge of self every day. So if you're in a district that's not safe to do it, just remind your kids, go home and work on the knowledge of yourself. Know your history, your family history. You know, how do you do that and to become better every day? So if you can't do it publicly, because people jobs, I mean, it's clear, people jobs have been taken away. You know, I've lost a job at the Department of Education. So, you know, okay, I'm going to get on my feet. I'm going to find a way to still pay these bills, put my grandchildren through college, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to say, oh, Jim, I'm giving up. I'm done with this, man. I think I'm being targeted. What? No, 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 no. So, you know, pull on your courage. In the word courage is the letter U. It's there to remind you. It is you're at the age to do you. That's the word of courage. C-O, find company. Co, find someone to work with. I found Jim. Jim found me. We're in the act of courage in our lives right now to overcome all the isms. And you just have to be determined. You know what? I'll say this to those coaches who're struggling. You faced a fourth down and long before. You face in soccer, you have faced a penalty shot. Take a deep breath and do it like you practice. When it's fourth down and long, I will not punt. I'm going for it.
You
All
know, I'd like to
right.
add on that. I think one of the biggest
Yes.
things we have to overcome is stereotypes and misbeliefs and all this kind of stuff. That's why you got to come. We need you to come and see the event and let kids get able to talk to each other. Contact brings acceptance. Please, we can't help you with anything
Yes.
unless you come and give it a try. You know, one of the things, Nathan, that's happened over the course of the summit, we do a summit, we do a coaches webinar, and we do the 7-on-7. So the 7-on-7 is our premier thing, but we have all three of those events that we've been involved in. And, over the times, there's times where something would happen, a coach would, I'd say to Al, well, this coach did that, this coach did that. And Al would step back and go, Coach, are you reading between the lines? And I said, Al, I'm in my bubble. No, I'm not. Tell me what he really means. I said, you know what? You're right. I missed that. I didn't understand when they said, well, this, that. Al said, this is what they really mean. I said, well, yeah, bring me out of my bubble. I constantly got to get out of my bubble. So I think that, small things, like Mother Teresa said, there are no great acts, just small acts done with great love. And we need to bring people together and understand our core. And Al's very good at talking about our core values and who we are as people and not let all the garbage clutter it up and, the stereotypes and, well, this, that, and the other beliefs. Bring people together. Nathan, I'm going to ramble just a little bit here. A belief I have, when it comes to race relations, there's a scale of 1 to 10. A 10 is a person that lives at every single moment of their lives. Everything in their lives involves black and white being together. I rate myself a 5 or 6. I worked in minority schools until 7:30 every day. I was involved with 100% minority schools or integrated schools, but I went home to my home, and I lived in the suburbs. A whole lot of my friends, Nathan, are 1s and 2s. But the biggest problem is the 1 or 2 who thinks he's a 9, or they think they're a 9. You know, they're not going to go to 9 right away. Go to 2. Get a little more understanding. As simple as that. Face who you really are. You know what? You know, just because you work with a person of different color, you know, and see them in a little manner, that doesn't make you a 9. And a lot of people think it does. So my whole challenge to people is look at where you're at that scale and try to make an effort to go up a little bit. You'll make the world a better place. You'll make our community a place. You'll make yourself a better person. So that's one of my beliefs. And that's a challenge I make for myself. I said, Jim, get out of the bubble. Listen to what Al says. And some of the excuses people have given us about not coming or this, that, and the other thing, there's a hidden message there that we have to overcome. The biggest hidden message is stop the stereotyping. No, this is a good event. How can you be against football and how can you be against coming together to talk about race? Pretty simple.
No, get that 100%. And I really like the way that you talk again about just those little steps. And can you go from a 1 to a 2 or a 2 to 3 in your personal assessment of your racial understanding? Can you go from a 5 to a 6? And that kind of ties back into the little battles and winning each of those little battles. But the little battles on the football field, each play is part of a series. Each series is part of a half. Each half is part of a game. And you have a season. And ultimately, you're also kind of thinking of where you would like to go at the end of the season that each play is taking you towards. So I always like to wrap up with that biggest picture vision of all. And for me, that's been asking each of our guests what they think of the term patriotism, if there's a way of turning that into a unifying phrase, as it has, again, often been used as either a wedge phrase or a dividing phrase or something that maybe we don't even understand. So I'll begin with Al, and then Jim, feel free to chime in after if you have thoughts as well. But Al, how would you define the defining characteristics of patriotism relative to America? And do you see a pathway beyond the little steps towards a vision that brings the country closer together?
Nathan, we have been doing so well. Now you're asking me one of those questions that people will misconstrue my answer, perhaps. See, patriotism is a term that is very patriotic in its sense, in its core. It means to be dedicated to commit to, right? But it interferes with destiny. Allow me to explain. Each one of us have a destiny to be patriots towards other human beings, not based on our landmass, not based on the skin of our color. The problem is that the term patriotism has been put into silos. So now I'm Christian, but now I look over, there's a different type of Christian. They're called this. And then there's one that has this belief. They only have people who look like them. We've been put into silos. The word destiny tells us everything. In order to fulfill your destiny, just circle the last 4 letters in the word, the suffix. You got to take tiny steps. Patriotism in America is us having the courage to take tiny steps towards each other. This is what I do in the class. And unite. That's real patriotism. Because when my brother came home from Vietnam, I was a little boy. Before he left, he had a lot of things to say about white people. He used the word peckerwood. It was always something. But when he came home, one of his best friends was a white guy. And like, what changed you? He says, man, when you're in a foxhole, you don't see certain things everybody's working together to get home alive. And this guy got me home alive, and I'll never turn his back on. That was a form of patriotism towards unity. Dr. King was talking patriotism. Some sociologists would disagree with me because he was talking unity, love, heart, one heartbeat. We are talking patriotism with our teams. One heartbeat. How many teams have said that term? One heartbeat, right? We breathe together, right? That's all one. So patriotism has been, unfortunately, excuse my term, bastardized for power. It has been othered. It has been othered, and that's the issue. If we were talking true patriotism, certain things and certain things wouldn't be occurring in this country right now. Certain ways that we have fed the world, we would have never stopped doing that. Patriotism should walk towards humanity at all times. And that's all I have to say about that. So
Just in closing, Al, it's a tough question. One nation under God. You know, you talk about we live in a country, and the more we can do this, the better the country we're going to be. And things that promote this are good. Things that promote this, I don't think are good. That's my personal belief. Patriotism is a great big picture. So there's a whole lot of things under the category of patriotism to talk about. We're talking about one element of patriotism, and that's bringing the country together based upon race, based upon everything else. It's simple as this. But the one thing I do believe is the greatest promoter of equity are the military and sports. Those are two great opportunities, like Al used the analogy of both, military and sports. Let's use that as an analogy to bring the country, one nation united under God, as simple as that. And Nathan, thanks for having us on the show.
Absolutely.
yes.
And really like what Al brought out in that last answer, where patriotism is the courage to take tiny steps, and you have to be honest. And this just to me feels it's a tiny step, and it's each of these kinds of conversations are tiny steps in the right direction. And every marathon starts with those first tiny steps. And so appreciate you being part of this today and allowing us to take some tiny steps in what we all think is a positive direction. So Coach Al, Coach Jim, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Nathan, for having the courage to invite us. Thank you.
Been my pleasure.